Hi. How are you? What is this?
A young man with a high score on a video game is recruited to fight a war in space, which is either the plot to a fun 80s movie or a heavily redacted chapter from my autobiography. Oops, I've already said too much.
Oh, you're gonna love it. Love it!
It's all fun and games until you get told that you are in fact the Last Starfighter.
You have been recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Zur and the Kodan Armada.
Okay, let's go.
The 1984 film The Last Starfighter is a curious beast. Space movies were big in the wake of Star Wars' release in 1977, but after that franchise wrapped up its storyline with Return of the Jedi, the demand for big space movies seemed to dive off a cliff faster than Papillon. There were Star Trek films and a few smaller films aimed mainly at kids, but for the most part, mainstream audiences stayed grounded. The Last Starfighter is a story about a kid from a trailer park being given command of an advanced starship to go and fight a war in space. I mean, it just happens more often than you think, but again, we're still bound by the Official Secrets Act.
They will bow to their new emperor, or I will darken the sky with their ashes.
Alex Rogan is a dreamer, living in a trailer park, trying to get together enough money to go to school and take his girlfriend Maggie with him. We know this because he stares at a solar system mobile hanging from the ceiling of his bedroom that he shares with his porn-addicted younger brother Lewis.
Now from the bottom up, okay? There's one right over there. Okay, good. Okay, up there.
Move your head, will you, Lewis?
Alex is continually frustrated in his plan to leave the park, or even spend a day at the lake where he would make time with Mags, which would also keep him away from home while his brother makes time with his Mags.
London, baby.
But when Alex does actually have a spare second, he likes to unwind with the one video game machine at the trailer park. After another day at the School of Hard Knocks, Alex manages to get the high score on the game. A game with curiously advanced 3D graphics for a 1984 arcade machine, but I digress. A rather fancy looking car turns up, and because this is a movie devoid of cynicism or even basic caution, Alex accepts a ride from the old man.
Centauri's the name. I invented Starfighter. Step into my office.
So thankfully this doesn't go where you think it will. The old man, a fast-talking con artist type, turns out to be an alien who proceeds to dump Alex on a military base in space, a base that's about to go to war. Well, that sure escalated.
You, and you alone, stand between us and the black terror of the Kodan.
The Rylosians are about to be invaded by the Kodan Armada under the command of Zur, the son of the Rylosian leader. I mean, there are some major daddy issues here, possibly related to hereditary hair loss.
You still want to go? And miss all the excitement?
Alex meets the lizard-like alien star pilot Grig, who seems bemused at Centauri collecting a bounty on delivering an unwilling participant in their upcoming conflict.
You know how long it took to invent the games, to merchandise them, to get them into the stores by Christmas?
Chastened, Centauri begrudgingly agrees to return Alex to Earth.
I invent the game, find a kid, drag him up there, and he doesn't want to be a starfighter.
Zur attacks the base, destroying the army that had been formed to fight the Kodan invasion. Back on Earth, Alex finds Mags is angry, and the source of that anger is the Beta Unit, or since I'm not American and some of the good folks of that country seem to find the concept of non-American accents difficult to accept, Beta Unit.
Hey, you look like me. Of course I do, I'm the Beta Unit.
The Beta Unit is a robot duplicate of Alex designed to take his place, but it's not a perfect replica. Alien assassins keep popping up all over the place, thinking that the robot is the real Alex, which gives the real Alex the impetus he needs to go back into space and fight the space war in space, a war that has real stakes because it is a war and in space. But if Zur prevails, it may not be all that long before the Kodan conquest reaches Earth, which would make it less a far-off war in space and more a holy shit, it's alien conquest. Centauri is mortally wounded and just manages to get Alex back to the base, only to find everybody was killed in the attack. Grig is there with the last remaining ship, one prototype starfighter. He quickly trains Alex as the ship's gunner, which conveniently isn't all that different from the video game that started all of this shit.
I'm about to get killed a million miles from nowhere with a gung-ho iguana who tells me to relax.
Even with Alex having little actual combat experience, the pair managed to outwit a bunch of Kodan fighters.
Theoretically, we should already be dead.
Back on Earth, things are heating up as the android Alex thinks something is wrong with his hearing. But no, more alien assassins are on the loose.
See?
The android Alex sacrifices himself and his friend's pickup to stop the assassins from sending a message to the Kodan. The lesson is, always ask for insurance details before you lend your truck to a friend. Zur's subordinates have pretty much had as much as they can take from their showboating leader. A guy so insecure he needs a fancy scepter as a prop while barking orders from the bridge of a spaceship. Zur is deposed by his Kodan officers. I mean, how could you not see this coming when this guy's monocle keeps flipping on and off? I mean, if you were buying a house and this guy was the real estate agent, you sure as shit wouldn't be making an offer.
Think we gotta use Death Blossom.
Remember, Death Blossom delivers only one massive volley at close range. Theoretically.
Then there's a battle, a rather quick one, where an untested weapon just so happens to work perfectly, and Alex and Grigg manage to destroy the Kodan, and the day is saved.
We're locked into the moon's gravitational pull. What do? We die.
And Centauri isn't dead after all. Then Alex and Grigg head back to Earth to show off Alex's fancy new ride. It's a round of huzzahs for everyone. Huzzah! The Last Starfighter is an aspirational and sweet science fiction fantasy movie that, yes, it does follow a lot of the same story beats as the first Star Wars. A reluctant young man who's swept up in a galactic conflict meets an old guy who drops him off in the middle of a massive pile of poo, promptly dies, and the young man happens to stop calamity almost single-handedly. But this time, instead of a desert planet, it's a trailer park on Earth, and he already knew the princess. Another crucial difference: most of the special effects in The Last Starfighter were created on a computer.
I'm a kid from a trailer park.
If that's what you think, then that's all you'll ever be.
Alex Rogan is a put-upon kid, a reluctant warrior, but when push comes to shove, he overcomes his doubts and kills thousands of alien invaders. This is a sweet movie, so there's no need to cover the time years later when Alex Rogan will have flashbacks and night terrors. Lance Guest kinda nails the character in what would be his most high-profile role.
I've been to another planet, Ma.
Catherine Mary Stewart, because, 3 names are better than one, would become a go-to actress for the ideal girl-next-door type character. She gets the movie's cheesiest but most memorable line.
I love you, Alex Rogan.
Having said that, she might need to speak up a bit since he's at least a few light years away.
And no, I did not use the Excalibur test. It was called a video game.
Robert Preston, known for his turn as a flim-flam man and the Music Man, was ideal casting as a flim-flam man, conning unsuspecting video game players into taking a test to see who was ideal fodder to be press-ganged in a war in space.
Centauri is impressed. I've seen him come and I've seen him go, but you're the best, my boy.
Veteran character actor Daniel O'Herlihy, yes, the old geezer from RoboCop, makes for a charming lizard pilot.
I'll have it all figured out by the time we reach the frontier.
What's that?
The frontier.
Grigg seems to both grasp the enormity of their task and yet not be overawed by it.
I've always wanted to fight a desperate battle against incredible odds.
Writer John Betchell came up with the idea of a kid being picked to fight a war in space. I mean, being picked sounds so much nicer than drafted. Lorimer was a production company that made a lot of television and smaller theatrical features. And like a lot of companies, the idea of a space movie in the early 80s sounded like it couldn't fail at the box office.
Not there, Alex.
Max, you gotta come see. I don't know when I'm gonna be back. Don't you see, this is it? This is our big chance.
Nick Castle had co-written Escape from New York with John Carpenter and had played Michael Myers in the earliest Halloween movies. The Last Starfighter would be the second film Castle directed, where most of his directing career would be lighter fare. The Last Starfighter was definitely lighter for the most part, apart from the unwitting high scorers of a video game being conscripted to fight off in a far-off war.
But I saw him fight. He could be the greatest starfighter ever.
That was a game, Centauri.
The basic idea of a kid being good at video games leading to something amazing was something that kids of the day could relate to. Because parents are often dismissive of the things that their kids like. It's not as good as in my day. And then those kids grow up and hate the things that their kids like. Oh, we had it better, not like today. Who grow up and post comments on, look, well anyway, the exception to this is The Last Starfighter.
Back to sleep, Lewis, or I'm telling Mom about your Playboys.
Which is such a great entry in the genre of 1980s but in space that it sort of hung around. Not really being a major thing that will pop into your head often, but when it does, it gives you more warm and fuzzy feelings than sticking a fork into an electrical outlet. Pro tip, put down the fork and watch this film.
You gotta grab it with both hands. Hold on tight.
The music from Craig Safin is suitably adventurous. The direction and acting sucks you into this world. It's very 1980s without any of the usual trappings associated with the 80s, so it's not filled with wall-to-wall pop songs, interminably interchangeable high school scenes, or outlandish fashions. The Last Starfighter does feel like it could be set in any decade.
You're not gonna believe it.
I told you, Alex. Me and my, how'd you put it, strange sexual urges aren't talking to you anymore.
The Last Starfighter is also where the computer stopped being window dressing in science fiction movies and started to pay its way behind the scenes.
Someday they're gonna say this is where it all began.
Computer graphics had popped up in films before, but usually on a screen as a depiction of actual computer graphics. The Last Starfighter would be one of the first, if not the first, to use computer graphics to try and create photoreal special effects in place of the then standard way of creating spaceship effects, which was motion control and miniatures.
Not even your mighty starfighters will be able to save you.
We shall see, Zor.
In the late 70s, early computer graphics company III showed a demo to Lucasfilm of X-Wings created solely in the digital realm. Some of that group later formed a company, Digital Productions, who would create all of the CG for The Last Starfighter using a Cray supercomputer. An army of artists and programmers would toil for months creating both the software to make the effects and the effects themselves, where they would turn Ron Cobb's designs for things like the Gunstar fighters into something that could give traditional effects houses a run for their money. The CG at the time does well enough with flat metallic surfaces, which means the ships and Centauri's car look great, but the CG at the time was less amazing with organic surfaces, so the rocky asteroids do look about as impressive as a stamp that has really let itself go.
Someday these cheapskates will thank Centauri, trust me.
A Cray XMP, as used by the makers of The Last Starfighter, cost nearly $15 million when it was launched in the early 80s and ran at a clock cycle of around 105 MHz. So while that was impressive for its time, it's a bit of a steal on the used market now. I have one myself where I use it as a media server. That might sound like overkill, but it heats the house really nicely in winter and makes it utterly uninhabitable for the other 9 months of the year. It's an amazing achievement, and most people probably wouldn't even realise that this was made in a computer. For the non-CG parts of the film, the production design works well, as do the creature designs. It's not Star Wars, but it's not got anything to be ashamed of in terms of prosthetics and makeup effects.
You're having a terrible nightmare. Go back to sleep.
During testing, audiences loved the scenes with the android, and so some small reshoots were conducted to give it some more screen time. Despite Lance Guest being ill and needing to wear a wig. Look, you'd be ill if you were put in the vomit machine known as the Death Blossom. On the film's release in the summer of 1984, it did okay, but not enough to say, hey guys, let's make a sequel, and then call the first one The Penultimate Starfighter. But it would be one of those films that would stick around. Its influence on other films was subtle. I mean, if you mixed The Last Starfighter with The Three Amigos, you would get Galaxy Quest. It would also be the first film that I can recall owning when it was released on a sell-through VHS at a bargain price that was basically the same as a blank tape. I do admit, I watched the film once, then put some sticky tape over the missing tab and used it as a blank tape, where I no doubt recorded shows that I never ever watched back. Looking back, it does seem like the film's distributors were trying to eke out just a little bit more money for a film that really should have been a bigger hit.
Don't be silly. Trust me.
No one picked up the baton to really use CG in a similar way until ILM's work on Jurassic Park rewrote the rules of how to do effects for movies. The Last Starfighter ends up as being one of those super fun movies. The 80s had a lot of really great movies, and let's be honest, some really awful movies. The Last Starfighter is a really good movie. And it has a relaxing and timeless appeal, like not wearing a watch while on holiday. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.
What the shit?
I said back to sleep, Louis, or I'm telling Mom about your Playboys.